Hey everyone, and today we're going to take a deep dive on all 5 LEGO Star Wars sets releasing in January of 2023. The smallest January wave in quite a while, it feels. The smallest of which being a Polybag X-Wing Starfighter. The X-Wing does look to be the best X-Wing Polybag yet, and it does have a Return of the Jedi logo on the bottom right, and I'm not showing the picture of the actual Polybag because I don't know if I'm supposed to show it or not. The next set is the 40615 Tusken Raider Brickheadz with 152 pieces for $10. This looks to be one of the best Brickheadz ever in my eyes, but I want to know one thing. Who writes the Lego.com descriptions? Because they wrote, Star Wars fans can relive thrilling scenes on Tatooine as they build a Lego Brickheadz Tusken Raider. I have a different recollection of thrilling scenes with Tusken Raiders.
I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them.
And someone who just might share some of those memories is in our next set, Boba Fett. Another Book of Boba Fett set here, set number 75344, the Slave 1 Microfighter with just 85 pieces for $10. Very standard Microfighter here. It is finally a Slave 1. It is something that is long overdue for the Microfighter lineup for sure. We have had a version of the Microfighter Slave 1 though as a Comic-Con exclusive, and I always thought that one looked pretty good, so I was looking for an improvement upon that with this set literally like 10 years later, and I'm certainly not a fan of LEGO continuing to not improve the Boba Fett minifigure. We're still receiving the discolored helmet that doesn't match the torso. It's been 2 years of this Boba Fett minifigure. We've seen no improvement, no communication to the community. They clearly just don't care about it. That's what it is at this point. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is a really dirt cheap way to pick up Boba Fett. But I feel like at this point too, anyone that wanted the Boba Fett would have went out and bought the Slave 1 on sale for $40. Oh, I forgot there were connections to draw here. Give me a second.
2 seconds later.
So for the last 2 years, one of the Microfighters released has turned into something bigger later in the year. That being the AT-AT Microfighter in 2021, of course becoming a UCS AT-AT, and last year the Microfighter Razor Crest, also seeing a UCS version alongside it later in 2022. And so a lot of people will certainly think that this could point to a UCS Slave 1 in 2023. I don't necessarily think that LEGO releases sets like this to hint. A good case in the opposite direction of these sort of trends actually mattering, because I don't think they do, is the TIE Bomber not being the Polybag this year, despite the last 3 years having the biggest set of the January wave be the Polybag. But it definitely has to make you think, and I think will get a lot of people's hopes up that a UCS Slave 1 remake could be coming. Another set I've put a lot of thought into since my initial reactions video the other day is the 501st Specialist Battle Pack, set number 75345, 119 pieces, $20. Battle packs are expensive now, but there is a lot to unpack with this one when you look into the details on the box and some of the images we have of the set out of the box, thanks to Tyler from Life Bricks for some of these images. On quick side note, some of these sets have been showing up in toy stores. That's how we have the pictures that we're even looking at today. If you do find any of these sets in your toy store and you're able to buy them and you're able to sell one to me, I'd love to buy it off you. Just shoot me a DM over on Instagram. I do want to make a video completely dedicated to talking about the issues with LEGO Clone Troopers. I was waiting for this set specifically to get revealed so we could see what direction they'd be going in for 2023, and it seems like some things are getting even worse. But for this set, we'll take it clone by clone. We have the 501st Specialist Clone Trooper. This one is very similar to the original 501st Trooper we had, except he now has the couple yellow markings on the torso, just a very simple change there. He also has blue arms. That is a pretty big difference from the other 501st Troopers that we've had so far. The biggest change though for this guy is the addition of the helmet holes so that he can have the macro binoculars, and the macro binoculars is a brand new piece for 2023. It is really exciting to finally have a new attachment for your clone troopers. Like, it is something that's different than what we've had for the last 15 years, and that is saying something. What I don't necessarily like about the macro binoculars is the lack of a print. LEGO macro binoculars in the customs world have been around for a decade, at least, probably longer, and they have had prints on them that entire time. They are extremely detailed, very good looking macro binoculars in the customs world, and LEGO, in my eyes, has dropped the ball in a way. These clone troopers are supposed to be based off Battlefront 2, and as such, I would expect the macro binoculars to match with the blue stripe. I think it just looks like a prototype piece when it's in all white. It looks unfinished to me. You know, from someone spending $20 on a battle pack, you would like that to be accurate and proper. I do think that is the best clone trooper in the set though. I think it is downhill from here on. Next up we have the 501st Officer, of course using the same base of a 501st Trooper with the helmet print, the torso print, print and the leg print, except this one adds quite a bit. On the torso, you've got a blue belt, which is another nice bit of color, much like the blue arms on the 501st Specialist. However, the other two additions to this trooper are aspects that I very much dislike. We have a waist cape. However, LEGO is going full in on printed waist capes. They no longer want to do the physical cloth piece that actually looks nice, that actually wraps around the legs that we had for the past decade. The last one we saw was in 2020 with the 212th Airborne, and thankfully it was on that figure because I think that figure is fantastic. I went out and collected a bunch of them. I thought it looked so good. But with the printed waist cape here, it's just nothing to me. It's just two black strips on the front side of the leg, and it feels so incomplete to me. But what's even worse about the 501st Officer is the way LEGO is advertising it to you. The way they portray it on the box, they're selling it to their consumers like this, and this is an issue that I obviously brought up with the 212th helmets and the ATTE, and they never fixed the box art on that to portray the 212th helmets properly, or what they should have done anyway is fix the print on the 212th helmet to actually look good and proper, and that is an issue that we'll get to in a second. But the false advertising issue with LEGO Clone Troopers has just gotten worse with the rangefinder for this 501st Officer. You can see in the picture, it is shown as being attached well below where the actual hole for the attachment for Clone Troopers is on these newer Phase 2 helmets. So I went and grabbed some super glue to give you an example. You can see on the ugly 212th helmets here, the front version is super glued to look like what LEGO Star Wars is falsely trying to sell you on for their 501st Officer versus the middle trooper there, which is how the rangefinder will actually be attached to your 501st Officer. And as you can tell, it looks pretty dorky like that, so I understand why LEGO Star Wars would falsely advertise it to you and try to make it look better than it actually is, because it looks like dog water. So I'll have more to say on this particular issue in my Clone Trooper video coming up, but yeah, that's a bit of a problem there. Closing out our character selection is a pair of 501st Heavy Troopers, and starting with the legs, they do use the same legs as the normal 501st Troopers, and this is a bit of a disappointment because the bottom half of 501st Heavy Trooper legs is all blue in the game, basically. So this could have been the type of figure where we get a footprint that's white, the dual mold blue leg, and then white leg on top. Like, I just don't get why we couldn't get something super cool and detailed like that, because to me, these figures feel naked in a way. Like, it's just wrong looking to me compared to what we see in the Battlefront 2 game that this is obviously based on. Their weapon choice is another thing I saw people bring up. It's not something that I personally care about too much, but they do use the same build as the Dark Trooper weapons, which is odd given it looks like they have a bit of a longer rifle in the Battlefront 2 game. I'm not a Battlefront 2 expert. I don't know if they always use this particular rifle, if LEGO has it right or wrong here. It's just a concern that I saw people bring up. But obviously what I think looks the wonkiest here is the visors. This is another great reason that LEGO should have redesigned that visor with Phase 2 Cody. Much like with the macro binoculars though, it does get rid of the issue of the helmet holes looking ugly at least. You know, it's one thing for another, I guess, at that point. But this is another figure we can certainly expect to have printing issues, much like with Phase 2 Cody, and it kind of went under the radar because the 212 helmets were just so bad. But Phase 2 Cody is also falsely advertised to have a better print than what actually is on the top of the helmet. It's a real shame to see this lack of quality for LEGO Star Wars going into 2023. I know I just spent a long time harping on some Clone Troopers, but the thing that I think is actually the best in this set is the cannon. I think they did a fantastic job with this. It looks really, really good. I love that the actual barrel for the cannon is really long in this set. I feel like a lot of the ones in the past felt a little too short, especially with that one from the Commando set was the like 6 stud shooter, and that looks weird. You know, they kind of avoided that with this one, and I really like that. The spring-loaded shooter built into it is a nice play feature for kids. You can fit one of your heavy troopers onto the seat on the side. The legs are nice and spread out. You've got the clear piece underneath that will give you some added stability, and of course the cannon can move up and down like you would expect. So really nice cannon for this battle pack, and something that I'm looking forward to having for my army. And finally, we have the best set of the January 2023 wave in my eyes, the 75347 TIE Bomber with 625 pieces for $65. This thing looks fantastic, and maybe it's because I didn't have super high expectations. Expectations are the thief of joy after all. Final First Battle Pack number 2. Because if you look at what is now the $45 downsized TIE Fighter, the thing looks pretty rough in comparison. It's got bad proportions compared to what it's actually supposed to be, but this set just seems to have nailed it. It looks fantastic, but we'll come back to the set. Let's talk about those minifigs. We have Rey Sloane. She looks decent. It's not what I had hoped for her figure, I guess. Of the one expectation I did have was that I wanted her Grand Admiral outfit, but it's always great to see LEGO Star Wars do something outside of the box like this, where it's not just another Stormtrooper. Like, anything other than a Stormtrooper is great here, and Rey Sloane definitely fits the bill. We also have the Darth Vader, which I honestly can't tell if he has the printed arms or not. I'm gonna assume so, but maybe, maybe not. Then we have our TIE Pilot, not all too exciting there. And then for the Gonk Droid, a very interesting piece usage pointed out by Promo Bricks. They used the Imperial weapons crate for the body of the Gonk Droid. Just a cool piece usage to be able to get that Imperial logo on there and make that Gonk Droid a little bit more unique. LEGO's been putting out a lot of Gonk Droids lately. When are they gonna do a big buildable one? Now, as for the bomber itself, the excuse LEGO Star Wars designers gave as to why there hadn't been a TIE bomber in so long when asked a few years back was that they couldn't add in enough play functions at a reasonable price point, but they seem to have nailed it here. We have a bombing function. You can see the 3 bombs coming out of the bottom. They are essentially flick fire missiles. I'm sure you don't actually have to flick them. I'm sure they just release and drop, but the flick fire missile piece is the base of that, and they actually look really cool with this nice kind of yellow or green color. The color of this could be off. It's a back of instruction manual picture, so bear with it. And we also have the stud shooters built into the set that at first glance look like it's the big cannon thing here. It looks like that's the big thing, and it was a little bit disappointing to me at first glance. However, if you look a little bit more closely, they are clearly coming from the middle of the ship, and so those are just shooting straight out of the top middle of the TIE bomber, and there is actually the giant cannon on the right that you can shoot out, much like in the 2003 set. Now, nothing will ever match those big FU cannons that they used on sets like the 2003 TIE bomber, but it is essentially the same thing, just with a newer twist. Promo Bricks also says there will be a small cargo speeder that you'll be able to transport your missiles and bombs into your hangar with. So that seems like a nice extra piece for the set for some added playability for kids, but on its own, this TIE bomber is phenomenal. Definitely the best set of the January wave, and might be my favorite TIE Fighter build thing ever. Like, this is such a great build, especially coming from that 2003 TIE bomber. Massive upgrade over 20 years, as you'd expect, and something that I cannot wait to make a comparison video on. It is going to be fantastic to look at just how much has changed.